In the 8th year of my marriage, the internet became a gallery of my husband's betrayal. Photos of Liam Miller on what looked like a romantic vacation across Europe with his childhood sweetheart Chloe Davis were everywhere. They were smiling in front of landmarks, sharing meals at quaint cafes, and in one particularly brazen shot, he was looking at her with an expression he hadn't given me in years. As if that wasn't enough, Chloe had captioned the collection with 2 simple words that felt like a deliberate blow: "Forever in love." I stared at my screen, a strange calm washing over the initial shock. There was no grand explosion of feeling, just a quiet, hollow certainty. With a steady hand, I navigated to her post and used my own verified account to like it. Then, without a moment's hesitation, I went to my photo gallery, found a clear, high-resolution image of our marriage certificate, and shared it publicly. My phone rang almost instantly. It was Liam. His voice, when I answered, wasn't pleading or apologetic. It was sharp, filled with an indignant anger as if I were the one in the wrong. He launched into a tirade, demanding explanations, asking what I thought I was doing, venting his frustration as though I had publicly humiliated him. I waited patiently, listening to the torrent of accusations, until he finally paused to take a breath. It was only then that I spoke, my own voice measured and devoid of the emotion that was raging in his. "Let's get a divorce, Liam," I said. "It's just as you wished." At that very moment, I was closing the second of 2 suitcases in the master bedroom of the Miller family villa. It struck me as funny, in a bleak sort of way, that after 8 years of being Mrs. Miller, everything that was truly mine could barely fill 2 pieces of luggage. The rest of the sprawling house was filled with things Liam had carelessly given me over the years, gifts that felt more like obligatory tokens than expressions of genuine affection. He had positioned me as the perfect housewife after a major fallout with his family over his decision to marry me, tucking me away under a noble but empty title. In the early days, this came with perks, like a secondary credit card, with a limitless balance. But as the years passed, he began to find fault in everything I did. I couldn't grasp corporate dynamics the way he wanted. I wasn't as lively or radiant as Chloe Davis. Eventually, the privilege was revoked, and the card was taken back. When he called a second time, his voice had turned cold and was weighted with blame. In the background, I could faintly hear the sound of Chloe sobbing dramatically. I glanced at the clock on the bedside table. It was the middle of the night in whatever European city they were in, a detail that made everything painfully obvious. "Olivia Taylor, what were you thinking?" Liam's voice was loud in my ear. "Do you know how badly Chloe is being attacked online because of you?" Whatever fragile hope I had harbored in my heart was decisively crushed by that one sentence. He had completely forgotten it was our wedding anniversary. In the past, I would have gone to incredible lengths to keep up appearances. Whenever Chloe would cross a line, I was always the one who smoothed things over, the one who had excuses prepared for our relatives and friends before Liam ever needed to explain anything. I would have already been crafting a narrative to protect them before their plane even touched down. But not this time. This time, I was done protecting them. "If you apologize to Chloe right now and post a public statement clarifying things, I can still forgive you," Liam said sternly. The sheer self-righteousness in his tone made my heart tighten, and I hated that it still could. When I remained silent, he softened his voice, though the underlying pressure remained. "Olivia, Ava is just in a bad place emotionally. We grew up together, you know that. I can't just leave her alone." If I had heard those words a few years prior, I might have exploded in anger. The reason was straightforward. Chloe had a boyfriend, but because he wasn't from a prestigious family like the Davises or the Millers, she never acknowledged him in front of Liam. This time, however, I felt a rare sense of profound calm settle over me. "Yes," I replied quietly. "Even though Chloe has a boyfriend, she still needs your company." Liam went completely silent. After a long pause, his voice returned, now turned icy. "You!" I cut him off before he could launch into another lecture or a threat. "So, like I said, let's get divorced. That's what you want, isn't it?" There was another brief silence on the line before he finally spoke again, his voice distant and cold. "Are you really sure you want to divorce me?" I answered plainly, "I'm not fighting with you. I'm just getting a divorce." A dry scoff echoed from his end of the line, as if he couldn't take my words seriously. In his mind, I had always been the wife who trailed behind him quietly, the one who was just hoping he would turn around and notice her, The thought that I would be the one to initiate a divorce clearly amused him. "Didn't expect you to play hard to get," he said with a sneer. "Too bad that doesn't work on me. Since you brought it up, fine. Let's get divorced. Just don't come crying back when you regret it." The call ended abruptly. I stared at the screen, which had gone from glowing with his name to a cold, empty black. A moment later, it lit up again. This time it was Mrs. Miller, Liam's mother. Her voice was syrupy sweet on the surface, but carried a heavy weight of reproach. "Olivia, how could you do this?" "That girl, Chloe, she only acts out because she looks up to our Liam so much. She's just a child, really. She grew up being spoiled by the Davises. She doesn't know better. That's why she caused all this trouble." She paused for a sigh before continuing. "Granted, Chloe can be a little headstrong, but you're the older one. Her sister-in-law, for heaven's sake! Why would you slap her in the face like that? Just delete your post on social media, bring some gifts, and go with Liam back to the family home. Apologize to Chloe in person, then make a statement online to smooth things over. Chloe won't make things hard for you. Once that's done, we can all move on." Listening to her carefully scripted speech, I couldn't help but laugh. It was a quiet, breathless sound born of pure frustration rather than amusement. I remembered when Liam and I first got engaged. Back then, Mrs. Miller had treated me like a priceless treasure. If my tea at their house cooled by even a few degrees, she would rush to replace it with a fresh, hot cup. I had been the precious daughter-in-law they couldn't wait to welcome. And now? Now she was telling me I should swallow every bit of this public humiliation like it was expected of me. Was this just how people changed? I didn't think so. "Mrs. Miller," I said, my voice perfectly even, "Liam and I are about to finalize our divorce. Everything I said is the truth. I have no regrets and nothing to apologize for. And by the way, I don't know why Chloe insists on calling me her sister. This isn't the 1800s, we don't do concubines anymore." Without waiting for a response, I ended the call and blocked her number. The storm on social media had already broken. Even though Liam and Chloe tried to use their family's influence, the Millers and the Davicestos suppressed the news. The results were far from ideal. Their romantic getaway in Europe came to an abrupt end. A mutual friend tipped me off that they had returned early, so I called Liam. He let it ring for a while before finally picking up, his voice laced with disdain. "So, you figured out you were wrong? Hurry back and apologize to Chloe." I chuckled softly. His arrogance no longer surprised me, nor did it deserve a response. Instead, I said calmly, 9:00 a.m. tomorrow at the Civil Affairs office. His answer came quickly, full of scorn. "I'm taking Chloe to visit the Davises tomorrow, cleaning up the mess you caused." "I don't have time." Even though I had already let go of him in my heart, his tone, so sure that I should step aside for Chloe, still made my chest tighten with a wave of quiet anger. "Do as you wish," I said coldly. "I'll wait until 10:00. If you don't show up, I'll file for divorce through the courts," he snorted. "Let's see if you really have the guts. Just don't come crawling back later." The line went dead. The next morning, I waited outside the courthouse for Liam to arrive so we could file for divorce. 30 minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. The sun climbed high in the sky, scorching hot above my head. By the time it was nearly noon, I knew Liam was never planning to show up. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and turned away from the building. Without much thought, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a long time. It was my family's home, people I hadn't spoken to in ages. The moment the line connected, I felt something stir in the air around me, like a flicker of something long forgotten. "Dad," I started, but before I could say anything else, my father's voice came through, strong and certain. "If you regret it, come home. Your mother and I are always here for you. Come back for dinner tonight. Mrs. Evans will make your favorite sweet and sour ribs." Hearing those words, my nose tingled with the sting of unshed tears. I rubbed it gently, then mumbled into the phone, "Dad, can you help me find a good divorce lawyer?" He sighed, grumbled a bit as fathers do, but wasted no time. Within minutes, he sent me a contact. I added the lawyer and briefly explained my situation. After listening, he said the matter was a bit complex and suggested an in-person meeting. I agreed, setting the appointment for 3 days later. Just as I finalized the details with the lawyer, a familiar and unpleasant voice rang out behind me. "Well, well, fancy seeing you here, sis-in-law." It was Ben, Liam's longtime buddy. Back when Liam and I had first gotten together, Ben often covered for Liam's secret meetings with Chloe. After I caught them red-handed once, Ben and I had been on frosty terms. Things got worse when, during one drunken night, Ben openly declared that Liam and Chloe were meant to be together. Liam hadn't even defended me. He just laughed it off and muttered, "He's drunk," as if that erased everything. We had a terrible argument that night. Liam, in a fit of rage, shouted, "Look at yourself! You're acting like a crazy woman. Why can't you learn to be more like Chloe, kind and pure?" Later he claimed it was all said in the heat of the moment, a slip of the tongue, but I've always believed people speak their truest thoughts when they're drunk. I looked at Ben, expressionless. "Do you want something?" I asked flatly. We were never close, and I certainly didn't see the need for small talk on the sidewalk. He had one arm around a curvy woman in a tight dress and smiled at me like nothing had ever happened. "So, why are you out here alone today? Not heading back to the Miller house with Big Bro?" I didn't even lift my eyes. "Waiting for him," I replied calmly. "We're getting divorced." That made him freeze. His smile faltered, and for a second, he looked like he had misheard me. Then he chuckled, trying to smooth it over. "Come on, sis-in-law, that can't be true. Miller and Chloe are just friends. You're taking this too far, don't you think?" I nodded slowly, unwilling to argue. "Then I hope the person you love most ends up having lots of friends like Chloe." Ben's expression soured. I didn't wait for a reply. I opened the car door and climbed inside. The blast of cool air from the air conditioning swept over me, quieting the heat not just on my skin, but in my heart as well. There were several unread messages on my phone, all from group chats, created by people who used to be close friends of mine. One photo in particular caught my eye: Liam and Chloe standing together at the entrance of the Miller estate. Chloe was smiling gently while Liam stood beside her with a soft grin, his gaze fixed on the crown of her head with an unmistakable tenderness. Liam and I had married through a high-profile arrangement between wealthy families, but to my surprise, we actually got along quite well. Over time, I found myself falling in love with him, truly and deeply. When the Miller family faced a financial crisis and their cash flow dried up, I didn't hesitate. I stepped in and filled the gap with my own funds. I believed in Liam. At that time, he wrapped his arm around me with pride and passion in his eyes. He told me he would rebuild the Miller name, make the family stronger than ever, and promised that I would be admired as the shining Mrs. Miller. Back then, his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, treated me with warmth and affection. Even when my older brother warned me that the Miller family might not be as sincere as they appeared, I had brushed off his concerns. But now everything had changed. The moment I lost the protection of my parents, the moment the Miller family realized I had truly fallen in love with Liam, my world turned upside down. Liam began coming home later and later. His social gatherings became more frequent. Rumors and scandalous stories about him reached me again and again. Mr. and Mrs. Miller began to look at me with cold eyes, and when Chloe returned, their disdain for me became unmistakable. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. "Chloe has a fever. We'll talk about the divorce tomorrow." As I stared at that message, images of Liam and Chloe standing like a perfect couple in that photo flashed through my mind. The irony was almost too bitter to bear. All along, it seemed the happiness I had once believed in was nothing more than an illusion. Now that I could finally see Liam's true nature, I had no interest in playing games with him anymore. I turned my car around and headed straight back to the Taylor estate. I arrived home earlier than expected, but the entire family was already gathered in the living room waiting for me. They sat upright on the couch, solemn and silent. As soon as I stepped through the door, my mother's eyes welled up with tears. After I shared everything that had happened between Liam and me, my father slammed his hand on the table. "That Miller boy has gone too far," he thundered. My brother gently tried to calm him down, then turned to me. "Olivia, I know you're not one to act impulsively, so tell us, what do you want to do?" I raised my head and met his eyes with calm determination. "I want a divorce." I paused for a moment, then said with clarity, "But before the divorce, I plan to collect some interest from the Miller family." 8 years of marriage, 8 years of real money, youth, love, patience, and humiliation. I intend for every bit of it to be paid back, with interest. With the Taylor family quietly pulling strings behind the scenes, the scandal surrounding Liam and Chloe, which had recently been suppressed, resurfaced once more. Then, I released everything. The recording of the phone call Liam and Mrs. Miller had made to me that day, the photos of Liam and Chloe walking hand in hand back into the Miller estate. I posted them all online. Mistress, infidelity, a powerful, wealthy family, each word carried enough weight to stir up a storm. Within hours, the news had spread like wildfire, and the stock price of the Miller family empire began to plummet rapidly. In a desperate attempt to shift the narrative, the Miller family released an official statement through their public account. They included photographs and childhood memories showing Liam and Chloe growing up together, their tone filled with subtle accusations against me. The message was clear. They painted me as unreasonable, suggesting that Liam and Chloe were simply childhood friends, nothing more. Online opinion began to sway. Many suddenly changed their stance, convinced that there had never been anything romantic between the two. Some even went so far as to say, "The Miller family is one of the wealthiest in the country. What powerful CEO doesn't have a few close female friends?" I ignored them all. I blocked every member of the Miller family, along with Liam's friends. I waited quietly for my lawyer to finish drafting the paperwork. The divorce was coming, and it would be formal, clean, and thorough. Back when the Miller family faced a devastating financial crisis, it was my resources that pulled them back from the brink. Without me, they never would have reached the heights they enjoyed today. Now that we were divorcing, I would take what was owed to me. Even if I donated every cent to charity, I would not leave Liam with a single advantage. The Miller family's legal team repeatedly argued that my demand for 70% of the family's estate was excessive. I did not care. Later that afternoon, I saw new photos posted in a group chat started by mutual friends. Liam and Chloe were walking hand in hand along the beach, completely unfazed by the rumors. They looked relaxed, even joyful. On their fingers were matching rings, clearly a pair. Their ability to withstand the pressure and keep up appearances was truly impressive. In that moment, any lingering hesitation or emotional uncertainty within me disappeared completely. Barely 2 minutes after the photos appeared, they were reposted online by someone I had once called my best friend, Sophia Rossi. She captioned the image with a biting remark, "May everyone who believes they are just friends have a partner blessed with many such friends." The Rossis were also an old money family. Sophia and Chloe had never gotten along. Most of the Rossi family's wealth was based overseas, beyond the influence of the Miller family, so Sophia had no fear of retaliation. She stepped forward boldly, publicly calling out Liam and Chloe for who they were. And at this point, the Miller family had their hands full anyway. The lawyer recommended by my father moved swiftly. Before the scandal reached its peak, he filed a lawsuit against Liam in court. Liam stared at me that day with stunned disbelief. He looked as if he couldn't comprehend how the woman who had always been overly patient with him could now be so cold and resolute. Later that same day, as his car neared the Miller estate, Liam suddenly gave the driver new instructions. "Take me to the villa," he said. The villa had once been our new home, but in recent months, Liam had rarely returned. The driver turned the car around at once, and soon they arrived at the gated entrance of the quiet property. Liam stepped into the house, greeted by an interior that was clean and well-maintained, but he felt none of the warmth it once held. He walked through each room slowly. It took only a moment for him to realize that all of my belongings were gone. A few of the gifts he had given me remained, scattered in the walk-in closet as if I had left them behind without a second thought. Liam felt a tightening in his chest. Still, he refused to believe it. He couldn't accept that I truly wanted a divorce. In the beginning, when the rumors about Liam's affairs first started, I did react. I threatened him with divorce, packed my bags, and even moved out once or twice, but Liam always believed I was hopelessly in love with him. As long as he confirmed I was safe, he would leave me to cool off on my own. Meanwhile, he would continue drinking with young models, flirting with his assistant, and carrying on as usual. Within a week, I would come back, acting soft and defeated. What Liam couldn't understand was why, this time, I had drawn such a clear, final line. Was it because of our wedding anniversary? That couldn't be it. We hadn't celebrated that day together since our 3rd year of marriage. He thought long and hard about it, and in the end, he blamed it on my jealousy, calling it irrational and petty. Meanwhile, Chloe was growing increasingly anxious as public opinion began turning completely against her. She had always been the pampered darling of her circle, a woman who cared little for most things except for two: men and reputation. Now, she had neither. She had not yet fully secured a man like Liam who seemed perfect in every way, and at the same time she had earned the label of homewrecker. Even the Davis family was facing public backlash. The young elites in their social circle had begun to mock her openly and behind her back. Humiliated and desperate, Chloe decided she had to fix the situation fast. That was when she remembered her low-profile boyfriend. But what she didn't know was that he had already been persuaded to turn against her by me. There are only two types of men who can accept their girlfriends being surrounded by flirtatious rumors: those who don't care about them or those who have ulterior motives. Chloe's boyfriend, Daniel, clearly belonged to the latter. He was tired of relying on his family for money and saw wealthy women as his way out. But being used as a placeholder while Chloe flaunted her relationship with Liam wounded his pride deeply. By the time I approached him, he was more than eager to help. When the Davis family held a press conference, they decided to clear Chloe's name and salvage what was left of her image. Midway through, they publicly announced Chloe's engagement. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Mr. Davis, addressing the cameras with a smile, "all the gossip linking our daughter to the Miller family is completely baseless. Those rumors about her trip to Europe? She wasn't alone. Daniel was with her the entire time." With that, he turned to Chloe and Daniel, giving them a subtle cue. Chloe slipped her arm through Daniel's and smiled gracefully, though her tone left no room for doubt. "That's right, and if anyone continues spreading lies about us, my fiancé and I will not hesitate to pursue legal action." Then, Daniel took the microphone. He paused, facing the crowd of reporters, cameras flashing, before letting out a soft, mocking laugh. "Everyone," he said calmly, "I, Daniel, cannot accept a fiancé who is so shameless and full of lies." The room fell into stunned silence. A moment later, whispers rippled through the audience. Chloe's face turned ghostly pale. She stared at Daniel in disbelief. "The stories you've seen online," Daniel continued, "every single one of them is true." He was well prepared. With a single wave of his hand, the screen behind him lit up, looping damning footage and evidence. "Right before my dear fiancée went on that trip to Europe with Liam," he explained, his voice steady, "she told me she had fought with her family and needed time alone. She insisted I should not accompany her." He stepped back, arms crossed, while the footage played, and Chloe, speechless and frozen in place, could only watch as the carefully built illusion of her innocence shattered into pieces before the entire world. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs, but Daniel remained composed. One by one, he laid out every piece of evidence with remarkable clarity, explaining each incident thoroughly and precisely. Chloe stood frozen, utterly unprepared for this kind of public confrontation. Mr. Davis, her father, seemed like he wanted to intervene, but the moment he noticed that none of his people could get close to Daniel, realization dawned on his face. There was only one explanation: Daniel on his own could never have pulled this off. To gather this much evidence and present it so flawlessly while targeting Chloe's reputation with such precision, there could be only one person behind it: the Taylor girl, me. Despite the chaos unfolding across the room, it had no impact on me and Liam. Chloe had already shared her plan with him. Liam stood there, chin held high, waiting for Chloe's strategy to take effect. Once her end succeeded and he presented new evidence on his side, he figured the divorce would still go through, and I would walk away with next to nothing from the Miller family fortune. When the time was just right, Liam's lawyer stood up slowly and confidently. "We have new evidence to present." With permission granted, he played a video from a Davis family press conference. The footage was crystal clear. As the video played, Liam's face turned pale. He sprang from his seat, trying to stop the recording, but people around him held him back. He could only glare at me, his eyes filled with fury as if they could burn holes through my skin. When the video ended, I handed in another folder of evidence, documents proving how, when the Miller Group was in crisis, I had done everything I could to patch the financial holes and keep the company afloat. The verdict came out soon after, just as I had expected. Outside the courtroom, Liam stormed over to me, his expression dark and threatening. "Olivia, you did this on purpose," he hissed. At this point, I no longer had the energy to respond to his tantrums. I met his glare with a calm nod and replied without emotion, "You can think whatever you like." "No, Olivia!" Liam's voice cracked with rage. "We were husband and wife. That money you gave it willingly? And now you want to walk away with 70% of the Miller family assets? Have you no shame? Before I could respond, my brother stepped forward and pulled me gently behind him. His eyes locked on Liam, his tone low and amused. "Mr. Miller," he said, "I believe your sense of shame got lost somewhere in Europe, along with Miss Davis's." The click and flash of cameras erupted around us, cutting off whatever Liam had been about to say. The scandal surrounding the Miller family was already unbearable. He knew he couldn't afford to drag their name even deeper into disgrace. But it seemed that even fate had grown tired of Liam's behavior. Before I could make it back to the Taylor estate, the internet had already erupted with a flood of mockery and scorn aimed squarely at Liam and Chloe, especially Liam. A video taken outside the courthouse had gone viral, capturing him saying things he likely never thought would be heard by the public. Many who had once accused me of being too extreme suddenly realized that without me, the Miller family might have collapsed long ago. Public opinion turned swiftly and brutally. The ridicule shifted from criticizing his affair with his childhood friend to branding him as a man who lived off women and carried no true worth. It was like a vast net of condemnation had been cast, trapping Liam tightly within it. Lately, he had been acting like a man possessed. He began appearing frequently near the Taylor estate, lurking around like a ghost from the past. Worse still, he kept changing phone numbers, trying to bypass my blocks, sending message after message, calling nonstop. After declining his 20th call, I finally turned to the butler and instructed him, "Please go outside and ask Mr. Miller to leave. Make it clear he is not welcome here." I also had a new sign posted at the front gate. It read, "Liam and dogs are not allowed inside." After spending several days at home, I arranged to go shopping with Sophia. The scandal surrounding Liam and Chloe was still simmering online, with plenty of help from the Taylor family and a few powerful old money families who had long disliked both the Millers and the Davises. Even after more than 10 days, the news still hadn't completely died down. After Sophia and I finished our outing, we returned to find Liam once again camped outside the estate gate, like a stubborn stain that refused to be washed away. Just as we reached the front door, a low rumble of thunder echoed overhead, followed by a sudden downpour. I glanced up at the sky and sighed softly. "Mrs. Evans," I said to the housekeeper, "bring it inside, would you? Poor thing, it looks so pitiful out there in the rain." Liam's eyes lit up at once. In his mind, this was proof that I still cared, that everything I had done was just a facade. Deep down, Olivia still loved him. He took a hopeful step forward, only to stop short when he saw Mrs. Evans emerge from the bushes, holding a small yellow and white puppy under her umbrella. His face darkened instantly. No one at the estate even looked in his direction. The rain streamed through his hair and down his face, soaking him completely in a matter of moments. He looked like a man left out in the cold, drenched and forgotten. Just as he turned to leave, a quiet rustle and the sudden presence of an umbrella over his head made him pause. Liam spun around, expecting to see me, perhaps with an expression of guilt or tenderness, maybe even a hint of the old affection he counted on manipulating. His mind had already begun rehearsing what he would say to win me back. Instead, he saw Chloe standing there in a white dress, her face pale, her eyes shadowed. "Chloe?" he asked stiffly. His voice lost the confidence he normally carried. He had always maintained the upper hand with her, always expected her to play along, to flatter and comfort him. He had never let her see him like this. Drenched, defeated, ignored. Still clinging to some sense of control, he turned back to glare at me through the window, where I sat inside, happily playing with the puppy. Chloe smiled gently, but the sadness in her eyes was too deep to miss. "I heard you were here," she said quietly, "at the Taylor estate, and when I saw the rain, I just thought—" Her voice faltered, then dropped to a whisper. She lowered her gaze and clutched the umbrella tighter. "I just thought, with the rain this heavy, why didn't you bring an umbrella, Miller? What if you got sick? What would we do then?" Liam's heart had softened for a brief moment, but then he hesitated. He quickly turned to Chloe and asked, "Who exactly are you talking about?" Chloe's face froze, her sorrowful expression faltering. She had thought her gentle nature and considerate words would earn her more compassion from Liam. She never expected him to question her. Still, she tried to explain. It's Ben and Sophia. They've been talking non-stop about you in the group chat." Liam clenched his jaw. Sophia again. Sophia had returned with me and witnessed Liam clinging to me like a man desperate to undo his mistakes. She wasted no time sharing the entire spectacle with her close friends, and Ben. He boldly tagged me in the chat and wrote some nonsense like, "A reformed player is worth more than gold. Come on, sis-in-law, just forgive Miller already." I had nothing but contempt for Ben's words. From where I sat on the sofa, I picked up my phone and aimed it through the upstairs window, snapping a few clear photos of Liam and Chloe standing close together outside the Taylor's house, playing the part of a loving couple. Without saying a word, I sent the photos to the group chat. The chat fell silent in an instant. Even Ben, who had just been speaking up for Liam, turned beet red with embarrassment. A wave of frustration swept over him. He had been defending Liam's character, and meanwhile, Liam was cozying up to Chloe right in front of everyone. They might not care about their reputations, but Ben still cared about his. After that incident, Liam disappeared for several days. I hadn't seen him once. Meanwhile, the Miller family business hit a rough patch. When I left, I chose not to take company shares. Instead, I took the equivalent cash payout. Though Liam and I had signed a prenuptial agreement years ago, there was no denying that Liam had significantly expanded the Miller empire in the 8 years of our marriage. What I walked away with was far more than what I had initially invested, but no sooner had the money landed in my account than the Miller Group faced another financial crisis. Their funding chain collapsed again. Both Liam and his father were like ants on a hot pan scrambling for solutions, but Mrs. Miller, her eyes had shifted this time to Chloe. Back when I still believed in Liam and wanted to build a future with him, I had poured my own money into covering the family's debts. Mrs. Miller remembered that well. She had tasted the benefit once and was now subtly hinting that Chloe should do the same. Chloe clung to Liam. Sure, some of that was because of his looks, but more than that, it was because he was the Miller heir, a man with influence and power. Still, even if she wanted to pretend she was willing to weather the storm by his side, the money she had was a drop in the bucket compared to the hole the Miller family had to fill. And truthfully, she had no intention of emptying her bank account for them. She wasn't his wife yet, and the very fact that I had stepped up and bailed them out once was precisely the reason neither Chloe nor her family would follow in my footsteps. But none of that concerned me anymore. After taking a few days to rest, I returned to work at Taylor Group and resumed my previous position. Life was moving on. What I didn't expect was to be confronted by Chloe after work in the parking lot. "Is something wrong?" I asked coldly. I frowned as I looked at her. Her once radiant face was now shadowed and pale. Even the clarity in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a kind of desperation that was hard to ignore. "Olivia," Chloe croaked, her voice raspy. "Why?" Sensing something was off, I quietly dialed my brother's number and left the line open. "Why?" Chloe suddenly shouted, her eyes wide and accusing. "Why are you divorcing him? Why are you taking a share of the Miller family's fortune? What gives you the right?" Her sudden outburst took over the room. Her entire body trembled with emotion, unable to contain her fury. In the past, whenever Chloe caused a scene like this, I would take it upon myself to smooth things over, offering excuses on her behalf to relatives and friends. I always made sure to protect the family's image. But this time, I made no effort to defend her. I had prepared for this moment long before she and Liam ever came back. I looked at her calmly, the disdain in my eyes striking her like a slap to the face. "I'm a businesswoman, Miss Davis," I said coolly. "I assess risks and benefits. I withdraw when the time is right. That's what any capable person would do." Chloe's hands clenched at her sides. She was clearly struggling to accept reality, the bitterness thick in her expression. "If it weren't for you," she hissed, "I would have become Mrs. Miller. Half of everything the Miller family owns would have been mine." I almost laughed. Folding my arms across my chest, I simply looked at her without saying a word. Suddenly, like a woman unhinged, Chloe lunged at me, but I saw it coming. With one slight turn, I avoided her and, without hesitation, pressed her to the floor in a firm hold. "Olivia!" she screamed, looking up at me from beneath. Chloe caught sight of my calm, slightly amused expression, and in that moment, she remembered something she had long forgotten. Before marrying Liam, I had trained in martial arts for 10 years. It didn't take long for the police to arrive, along with my brother. Since the altercation took place in the Taylor estate and officers were involved, the Miller family quickly got word. The news spread fast. Liam, shaken by the incident, made a critical mistake. Without verifying any facts, he let the story leak to the media. It hadn't even been a full month since the last scandal, and the public still remembered the chaos. Online discussions flared up once again, but this time official statements were released, and the truth came to light. Rumors swirled in every corner of the internet. People speculated, debated, and took sides. But Liam knew deep down that Chloe had never truly loved him. She had only wanted to cling to the Miller name and enjoy the status it brought her. Once he realized this, Liam tried to play the part of the remorseful man once again, returning to me with empty words and hopes of reconciliation. But before he could act, rival families who had long been at odds with the Millers seized the moment. They joined forces to dismantle the company, piece by piece. Liam soon found himself overwhelmed, unable to salvage what was left. By the time the Miller family officially declared bankruptcy, I had already regained full control of the market landscape. Without looking back, I threw myself wholeheartedly into the operations of the Taylor Company, stronger, wiser, and finally free.